Hi friends, and welcome back to my studio. If you are new here, my name is Tammy Ernest and I am a longarm quilter, and here on my channel I like to share my own personal sewing as well as customer finishes that I do on my longarm machines. So today I have updates on my hometown holiday sampler that I'm doing the quilt along with Fat Quarter Shop, and I also have my checkerboards to show you. So I am stitching along with the hometown holiday sampler. Hope you're doing this one. This is so fun. And it is a weekly quilt along, and I did not bring the schedule with me. But this past week we were starting on the letters, and so I'm so excited. I have not finished all of the star blocks. I'm working on those. Still working on some of the back weeks from that, but I did go ahead and do the letters. But let me show you first of all, I'll just show you my little tin. Keeping all of my blocks that I have finished, the ones that fit in here, and then also some just little scraps that I have, or like this blueprint right here and some of the reds. Those are cut for the next blocks that I need to do, some of the star ones, and so I just set those in here. I love these enamel tins. You get them, I pick them up at the antique store. I like the little bit of rust around the edges, like it if they come in different colors, but black is probably my go-to. I like black and white things, so fun, so fun. All right, so here's the hometown holiday sampler, and so this past weekend I did work on the Flicker holiday star blocks, and I'll show you those. Here I have all three of those. Lots of fun. Now Lori does her blocks a little different than you may normally do. So you're creating this, so if you look at just a fourth of this block right here, she has you do this long blue, so this blue background that you see right here, this is actually a long rectangle piece, and then you join that with a square of this green print and then a square of the background print. That is your main block, okay? Then she has you add easy corner triangles on all of the edges after you put that four-piece, that part together. It's only three pieces, one long rectangle, the two squares. She has you join that all together first, and then she has you do an easy corner triangle on this side, easy corner triangle on this side, so this looks like a half square triangle block, but she doesn't make it that way. And then she has you put on the easy corner triangle here, and then that creates the block. You make four of those, but then by switching them around and joining the gold color in the center, then you have that square right there. So really fun, really easy. You're not dealing with small little pieces in these half square triangles because you are creating this larger block and then laying your corner square on there and stitching across. You're not dealing with a lot of small ones. So really cute. I like how this one, I like this block because you have this long rectangle here, or long triangle here, and the shorter ones here. I just like the way that looks. So these are called the Flicker holiday star ones, and those are all finished. The next ones I will work on are the Glisten holiday, and that is what some of these blue pieces that you saw in here, that's what those are for. Now what I have been doing most recently is when I pull this fabric out to cut the pieces for the Glisten holiday block, then I will look through the pattern and see any other times that I'm using this fabric and go ahead and cut those pieces too, and then I keep those all together. The extra yardage that I have left from this, I just put those extra pieces in there as well, so that next time I go to look for that fabric, the pieces are already cut for that. So instead of cutting everything ahead of time before the quilt along, I'm just doing it as I come to that fabric. And I didn't do that from the very beginning, but now that I'm pulling out fabrics, I'm like, why am I touching this every time I pull out this fabric? Every time it's needed, I should just cut off everything that's needed when I pull that fabric out for the first time. So then I jumped ahead. There are several other star blocks that need to be done. Shine holiday, the Sparkle holiday, the Glimmer holiday, Bright holiday, Shimmer Holiday Star, Holly Berries. The house blocks should have already be done. The tree blocks should already be done. So I do have some catching up to do. So everything that you see down here, the stars interspersed, should already be done. I'm just going to have to continue to work on those as I work on my letters. So you want to see my alphabet? These went together so quickly. And again, I'm cutting the pieces. Let me make sure. Sometimes they're hard to see up close. There we go. I had them out of order. That's why it was hard to see. Because these are like pixelated prints, you know, or you're joining them and they almost have a pixelated like look. So obviously when you see it on the cover, you know what it is. But if you just saw this block by itself, I don't know that you would know that was an A. But when you put it with the whole alphabet, it's obvious. These go together super quick. I did this while I was watching baseball the other night, getting excited for the World Series this weekend. So in addition to a wedding, and I'll talk about that in just a second. So this is the A block. And like I said, these went together super quick, super quick. This is B. Can you see that? Then this is C. And D. And again, if you just saw this block, I don't think you would know what it was, but when you put it together like that, mine looks like it, doesn't it? Yeah. And when you put it together with the other letters, then it's pretty obvious what it is. So I'll be able to get the rest of that done super, super quick. So the World Series is coming this weekend, but that's not the highlight of our weekend. This weekend is Maggie's wedding, and we're just a few days out from it. Spencer has arrived in town. Daniel will be arriving this evening. He's got to cut a couple days of classes to be here for the wedding, but that's fine. And we're expecting a delivery of live flowers today, and so if I have to pause the video, that's why. They may pull in the driveway. But Maggie's doing live flowers for all of the bouquets for herself and for her bridesmaids, and super talented. She's already done all the dried flowers that are going to be used as decorations around the stage and that kind of thing. But their bouquets are live, so we're expecting those today. All the pies are baked. We did that in the last 3 days, finished that up this morning. And let's see, we'll be decorating the church in the next couple days, getting all of that as family starts arriving in town. So we're super excited. We've had a beautiful day, beautiful week of weather actually, and it's very beautiful today. We're expecting, it's forecasted to be very beautiful over the weekend, so we're excited about that. And I even have the windows open today. I did have to shut that curtain because it was just too bright shining in, but that window is open. So if you see it flutter a little bit, that's what it is. The wind is blowing that. But it's we're super excited. Everything's coming together. And so far, so good. You know, there's always things that come up unexpected. And I just keep telling the girls, the rest of the family, that's the things that you remember. They become memories. So we're just going to expect that something along the way is not going to go right, but you just roll with it, and it's going to be a glorious celebration of the wedding of the two of them. In preparation for the wedding, we did finish the checkerboards. I showed you these last week. They were all together, and I was working on the quilting. So I have all the quilting done, and Maggie has finished the binding on all of these. So I did have the question, how big are those squares? These were cut 3.5 inches. So they finished 3 in the quilt. And then Maggie just added a single border around each one. The original one, I didn't bring that with me to film today, but the original ones that I made back when we had a pumpkin patch, I would do, so if it was this color, I would do a skinny border of this color and then maybe a cream of this one, another skinny one. Both of those may be cut 2 inches, so they're 1.5 inches wide when you put them in. And then I would do a larger, this size border around the outside edge. Again, outside edge. This is probably cut 3.5. It looks about the same size as those. So you can add some extra borders. But that's the way we wanted to get these together. And this is all done with things from my stash. She went through and picked out colors that she wanted, fabrics that she liked, and put them all together. Now remember, a checkerboard, you start with one color and you end with the other color. And then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows. So you're going to end with the opposite color in this corner. So do you notice that? So if you're putting a checkerboard together, that's how checkers works. And so we're going to use these on some tables in the reception and have the small pumpkins, the little baby boos, and the Jackby little pumpkins, and let people play checkers as they're enjoying the celebration. So Pantographs, Maggie said she wanted fall type looking ones. She didn't want anything geometric. And so this one is called Alfalfa. Did use a cream color thread on all of these. I did this fairly small, not super big, but wanted it to lie, you know, fairly flat because you're putting pumpkins on it. It's going to be on a table. And then I did alfalfa on this one. The next one, I cannot remember the name of this one. I'll put it in the description down below. It's like a meandering leaf. It's just all the leaves scattered about, going all different directions. Here's the colors on this one. I like the plaid fabric that she chose for this one, and the red, and then there's the backing. You can see the leaf on there. Pretty good. All right, this one. The next one we did taupes and creamy color for those squares, and then green around the edge, and then the binding. And then this one is called Leaflet. Again, kind of a leaf, but then you have this extra little swirl with a little circle at the end of it. So a little fancier than the leaf one, a little more open. The other one, I feel the leaves on that one really all nest together really, really well. And Kansas Trouble backing on that one. Two of these, the backing she picked out was large enough that I only had to load the backing once, and then I was able to do 2 pantographs. So what I did is I stitched out one and then loaded the second quilt, rotated the quilt back to where, you know, it was centered on that backing fabric, and then did the second one. So not that I did both at the same time, I just had the same backing fabric, and I finished one, and then was, without unloading the first one, I was able to pin on the second one and do that. So people ask, can I do table runners? Can I do smaller things like this? Yes, I do. Currently my minimum price for each project is $40. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't take that long to stitch out, but when you have to add, you know, I'm doing the backing fabric each time, it takes a while to load it, even though it's small. So I do smaller projects. Table runners would be great. Things like this would be great, but there is a $40, currently there's a $40 minimum charge per project. So this one has, this is almost like a tweed type, the feel of it is flannel, but it almost has a tweed type look to it. Paired that with the taupey color and then the orange, and then we did a darker binding. And again, I cannot remember the name of this one. I'll put it in the description below, but this one has like a little branch with leaves on it, and then it has a swirl. Those are connected by different swirls. And this is a cream color fabric as well. A cream color thread as well. So cute. So these are so exciting. And then she's going to use these as gifts for some of the participants in the wedding. So that's exciting. All 4 of those are done and ready to decorate. I think they'll add a lot of nice decoration to the reception as well. All right, let's move on to some customer quilts. Susan's first quilt here is called Rhododendron, and this is a Bonnie Hunter pattern. This was the mystery quilt from November 21 to January of 22. If you're familiar with Bonnie Hunter, every holiday season she does a mystery quilt along where she gives you fabric requirements and then puts out the clues each week throughout that time. And then once the quilt along is done, she bundles those all up and then creates one pattern that you can purchase. If you do it during the mystery quilt along, it is free patterns and you can download those instructions and have them to make your own quilt. This one was called Rhododendron. The pattern itself actually is written to be 83 by 98, and Susan has created this one so that it measures 55 by 55. So you don't have to create the huge pattern if you don't want to. Bonnie's patterns, if you're familiar, they are very intense, a lot of small pieces, but just absolutely beautiful once they're finished. The other thing I like about Susan's quilt is I like the dark sashing here. So if you look on Bonnie Hunter's website, she has actually done the dark blocks as these hourglass units that run through here. So when you look at the pattern, you're seeing those lines are what really stand out. And then her sashing lines are in more of a turquoise blue with a turquoise blue inner border. And by Susan changing up this color scheme on this and putting the dark one in the sashing, that's really what pops out and defines the blocks in that way instead of being this way. Color plays such a big part in this, so very interesting. The sashing on this is super tiny. I assume it finishes at about a ½ an inch, and then even these little pink cornerstones that she has are super, super tiny. So lots of intricate piecing, and then notice the backing fabric. She has this large floral that's done in pinks and blacks and yellows. She said she actually picked her backing fabric first and used the inspiration of the colors from this to then pick her colors on the front. And didn't she do a great job? So these are all stash fabrics, and she just used that one print and found yardage or scraps in her stash that then match that color scheme. Very cute. So you've got the yellow X's. I love the black centers on each of the squares. The alternating blocks are hourglass units set in 9 patches. Very intricate. And then you have the border. Look at the border. Flying geese units all the way around, and then a little different in the corners. So fun. She did a great job on this one. And this is a pattern you can purchase. I have linked to it to Bonnie Hunter's website. So the pantograph on this one is called Ginger Flower. And I took the inspiration of this because of the flowers that are on the back. Now you can see some roses, but then you also see this pink flower here, the lighter pink, and then the darker pink. When we were auditioning Pantographs, I said, I really like this look of the flower because then we can repeat that in the Pantograph design. The front of it doesn't have a lot of, I mean, you have small florals, but it's not a floral quilt. I mean, you've got lots of intricate piecing and design. So adding a floral Pantograph on top really matches the backing fabric, and then just as a nice complement to the front. I did use a white thread on this one. So Ginger Flower has that same shape of flower. It's going to be hard to see. The more busy your quilt top is, the harder the quilting is to see, which is fine. It's a good team. So if the pattern is very intricate, tiny piecing, very intense, then the quilting is a secondary design. If we have more open spaces on the quilt top, a very simple quilt top, then the quilting will take more of a front stage type of presence to it. It'll be noticed more often. But just love this. So the Ginger Flower, it has that 5-pointed or 5-petaled flower. I'm trying to see if you can see it. And then it kicks out and does the 3 loops and then right into the next petal or the next flower. I did use the natural white Omni thread for this one. The background fabrics are white. I like the white. Keeps it nice and bright and airy and so fun. The colors in this one are so fun with the reds and the yellows, and then the very striking blacks really make the contrast so you can really see the individual blocks there. Susan, this is incredible. Love, love, love this quilt. Susan's second quilt is the So Scrappy Spools quilt. This is a Lori Holt pattern, and so fun. Just absolutely love this. Susan is a Canadian, so all of the blocks that would have had, I don't know if you can see that one, that would have had American flags in it, she changed it to the Canadian maple leaf, and she did a really cute job with those. The fabrics, she said, are mostly Lori Holt and fig tree fabrics, all from her stash. Then she has used this, to me it appears kind of like a stone print in the browns and a little bit of gray for all the spool ends. Her background fabric is a low volume. It has just the slightest little pin dots of white on white. So fun. Just love this quilt so much. And then the backing fabric, I like this too. The backing fabric's really cute. This is Christmas stitch. This is a fig tree fabric. I love the motifs on this one, and the starburst in there, and just very intricate, really fun print. Love that. Very pretty. And the same tones, or the same tannish, the same tan colors. It's got a creamy background, and then the tan is printed on top of that. The border that she used around the edge is the opposite. It's more of a tan print with little white pin dots on it. And then notice the corners on this one. Isn't this really cute? She used that stone print that was on the spool ends, and then used this border fabric and created a patchwork heart. So this is done. This is a 9 patch right here, and then the two edges here are the easy corner triangles on a rectangle, and it creates that heart shape. She has done that each of the 4 corners, each one so that the heart is the bottom point of the heart is facing in towards the quilt. So fun. She did a really cute job on this one. The pantograph on this one is Easy Baptist Fan, and this is done by Three Sisters Fabric. This is the Baptist fan that I use all the time. I know on Pro Stitcher it does come with one that is a little tipped sideways, but I really like this one, the straight on one. Not that I don't like the sideways one, but I really like this one. And I did use a cream color thread on this one. The tone of this is a little darker. Even the whites are just a tad creamier. So I did the cream, the Omni 3004. It blends really well with the backing fabric also. I think with a white thread would have been too bright. It would have really stood out on the back. So the cream really blends in and just gives tons and tons of texture on the front. When this does pull into Pro Stitcher, I keep it the same size that it is. It's just a really nice size for stitching just about everything that I've done with Easy Baptist Fan. Now, when I did those tiny quilts several weeks ago, obviously I shrunk that one down, but for most quilts, I think this is a really good size that it comes into. Now, I don't fussy point it all the way down. I do have just maybe a 1/4 inch, 8-inch gap between the bottom of this fan and the top of the one underneath it. I like to give myself just that little bit of wiggle room. You're going to notice it more if you cross over and that point comes down over the top of this first one. So by just giving yourself a little bit, 1/4 inch, and it looks beautiful. Nobody knows that you left that little bit of a gap there, but that will give you some wiggle room, especially the larger of a quilt that you're working on. The farther you get down, the sides they tend to sag a little bit, and just give yourself a little bit of room to be able to play with. I usually tuck some batting in behind the bars just to get everything even, and if I have that little bit of wiggle room, then I can, it's a little easier to match up. So just some little tricks there. Very fun. Love this quilt. Very nice, Susan. This is Susanna's quilt, and this is a table topper or a wall hanging. This measures 28 inches square, and you may recognize this as Thimbleberries. Lynette, Jensen, many of us started our quilting journey many years ago with Lynette Jensen's patterns and fabrics, and I loved them so much. This one is called Deck the Halls, and Susanna did include a photo from the project book, so you can see that Deck the Halls. Now you will notice on the picture that there are prairie points with, they look like snowman buttons on there. And these will have to be put on after the quilt. Susanna said or after I've done the quilting. Susanna said she would decide once she got it back whether she does those parts or not, because like she mentioned, if it was hanging on a wall, those would be really cute. But as if it was a table topper or something, those may get in the way of placing your cup or plate or something on the table. So those have to be added afterwards unless you wanted those quilted down. So they really have to be, in my opinion, done afterwards so that they give that dimension to the quilt and they stand up off of it a little bit. So you can see super cute. Love this design, love all the Thimbleberries fabrics. The star is the only part that is appliqued down. Everything is pieced. She did this with a buttonhole stitch in black thread around the star there. For the pantograph, we went with what's called Christmas Star, and this looks like Christmas baubles, you know, or that you would hang on the tree, ornaments that you would hang on a tree. We did this very dense. Because this is a table topper, the dense fabric or the dense pantograph really adds a lot of dimension to it. You've got a lot of open area. It just adds that secondary design. So from a distance, if this is hanging on the wall, that's what you're going to see. And when you get in close, you can see the neat quilting, how it just adds to the theme of the quilt being Christmas. Then you've got like your ornaments on the tree. I really like that. So for the thread color, I did use, this is beige. This is 3068. And you can see, you know, on the cream side, but a little between a cream and a darker tan. All of the fabrics on this are much more muted, and even the cream color right here, it's got a light brown taupey color as a tone on tone on the top of it. So it really has this same color as the top, and then all of these others are very muted colors. Now you can see even with this darker beige color on the red, it does show up. So by doing a little darker, it adds a lot of texture on this middle part. You can still see it a little bit. You really lose it over here in the browns. Just a nice overall color. Cream would have stood out really a whole lot more on the outer edges, and I think this adds a lot of texture to the middle part on the back. Then it's just a lot of the texture on there. Love that print, a tiny Christmas print there. So I'll show this color in relation to some of the others so you can kind of get an idea. This is the cream that I normally use. This is 3004. So you can see how this is just a little more taupey color. And then I'm going to show this color. This is almond 3005. I'm actually going to show this on a quilt in just a few minutes, and you can see how that's got a little more of a grayer tint to it, but all in the cream color lines. So if you are not wanting to invest in a range of colors, I would probably stick with the 3004. This is one, the cream color that I use most often. And then you might go to just a little bit darker than this, so that if you had darker colors that more of a tan color. These are kind of in between colors that blend a little bit better with some fabrics, but if you're only wanting to buy a couple of colors, I would stick with the cream and then maybe just a darker tan on that side. But you can see the range that I have. I keep all three of these colors in stock, plus a couple darker ones, just because I'm doing so many quilts. That way I can really hone in on the color scheme. But if you're doing your own and don't think you would go through that many cones of some of these others, I would stick with those colors. All right, that's Susanna's first quilt. Susanna's second quilt is called Buttons and Bows. I don't have a designer. These are some older projects that she's sending in to be done because every quilt is worth finishing. She also sent a cover picture from this one. You can see how this one, I don't know if you can see very well, this was done by hand stitching, just straight stitching like a running stitch in the log cabin blocks. But you can see how this is being used as a table topper. The size of this one is 63.5 inches square, so it would be fine as a couch throw as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be a table topper, but we decided to go with something circular instead. So first let's talk about the pattern. The pattern is Scrappy log cabins. Now she does have the blue square in each one of the log cabins, but then after that it's just all Scrappy fabrics. What ties this whole thing together are the easy corner triangles on each of the log cabin blocks. The easy corner triangles, so she's alternating the block. So on this block right here, you can see there are larger easy corner triangles. The block next to it, or the opposite ones, have a much smaller easy corner triangle on it. And when you do that, then it creates this spool effect right here. So it's the same size on this log cabin block here. The four corners are all the same size, and then this log cabin block here, all four corners are the same size, just larger than the block before it. Because all of it is Scrappy, you really wouldn't have to plan this out ahead of time. Just have half your blocks have the larger easy corner triangles and half your blocks have the smaller easy corner triangles. And that's really what unites this whole quilt together, because the rest of it is totally Scrappy. Then notice in the border, she did a red border, but even in the border blocks, even the borders are done in blocks. It's not one long strip. So these are done in the same size blocks as the log cabin block. And then again, half of them are using easy corner triangles in a small size, and then half of them are using easy corner triangles in a larger size. Notice they are not on the outside edge, just so that it completes that spool look on the inside of the quilt. And the corner block only has one easy corner triangle on the corner. Okay, so really cute. We pulled the inspiration for the pantograph from those yellow spools right there, and we went with a yellow thread. And I think this is super cute. I think it really adds to the traditional feel of this quilt. You've got a traditional block with the log cabins. You've got a traditional setting, just, you know, squares. I like the spool theme in there. And then just going with a colored thread kind of just adds to the whole traditional feel, a little older feel to it. You can see the pantograph. This is called Becker's Crop Circles. This almost stitches out kind of like an S shape as each one as it stitches out, and then they are offset so that the row above and below it can nest in there. Great feature. I love pantographs that nest well with the rows above and below it so that you really cannot tell that distinction of where the lines are. Not super tight, a good coverage. I like this because no matter what size you give this pantograph, it's going to have good coverage. Meaning if I shrink it down, it's all going to be proportional, because all of the lines in here, they're all about the same width apart. So even if I shrink it down, it's going to be much denser, but it's going to be about the same amount of coverage. I don't know if I'm making sense in saying that, but even with I made this a little larger, you see how nice coverage, there aren't big open spaces. If you increase this even larger, one thing you got to watch out for is that you don't do it too large and it won't fit between your bars, especially when you've got nesting between lines above and below it. But if you increase this even more, it's still going to have larger coverage. You're just going to have it's still going to have good coverage. You're just going to have larger amounts of space in between those lines. So right now it's probably a ½ inch in between every line. So you could increase it to be an inch, but it's still going to be really good coverage. I think this is a really nice pantograph. No fussy points to match up. You just got to make sure your nesting is correct, but it's not like you're trying to match points. And just really stitches out really easy and gives it a nice look to it. And the yellow thread is a nice addition there. The backing fabric, she went with the floral. All of the thread just blends right in there. I actually, because of the backing fabric on this one, was very busy. And I felt like the yellow was going to be a little too bright on the backing. It is, you know, it's a bright yellow on the front to match those spools. If I had wound my own bobbins and put the same yellow in the bobbin, I felt it was going to be a little bright on this. So I actually went with the cream color on the back, just my pre-wound Magnaglide bobbins in the cream. The fabric is busy enough that even if I have any little pop throughs, I don't see them, but even if I had little pop throughs, they're not going to show with a busy fabric like this. If the backing was white, I definitely would have gone with the same white or a cream, maybe a muslin even. I would have gone with probably the same color thread as I did on the front, because if I used a cream on the back, so say this was a muslin backing, and I did cream on the back with yellow on the front, then that cream color thread is going to blend with the muslin, and if there were any dots of the top fabric or the top thread pulling through to the back, you're going to see just these dots of yellow all over a muslin backing. So on this one, I don't see any dots, but again, it's very busy, and that's the whole point. I don't want to see any dots. If it was a solid color backing, I would have probably gone with a different thinking in my bobbin thread, but cream color on that one. So cute. Every quilt is worth finishing. It's time to pull those out and get them done. So really, really fun. And you will notice there are in the log cabins, this is again one of those things when I'm up close I don't notice it, but when you pull back away you do notice that on the log cabins she does have a dark side and a light side on those log cabins with blue in the middle. So the camera may be reading it a little darker than it actually is, but she has done lights on one side, darks on the other. They're all scrappy prints, all things from your stash. So some fabrics are going to read a little darker even though they have prints on them, and you can see that on the camera, I think. Very nice, Susanna. I have two quilts by Sharon, and her first one is, I'm not sure if I'm going to say this right, Plumeria, I don't know. This is a fig tree pattern. I'll spell it for you. Plumeria. Not sure. So this is a fig tree pattern, and I've linked that down below to her website. But if you know fig tree fabrics, you know that this is done in a completely different colorway, and how fun is that? So fig tree is very bright yellows, oranges, limes, her basic color. She's had some cinnamon and some other oranges and browns, but you can tell by this colorway that this is not fig tree fabric. Instead, this is Lella Boutique, and this is her line called Flower Pot. So cute. I love the muted colors on this. I love the blues and the greens, the grays, the rusty color. I just love this. I have some of this fabric that I have saved back for a project that I would like to work on soon. And I love this. You've got large floral squares. This is square, 72 by 72. And you can see the block is done to create this large square, this large flower, I guess I want to say. A very boxy flower. And I think this fabric line goes very well with this. You can see each one of these. These probably measure probably 10-12 inches square is the size of those. Really cute. So square, so it's 4 by 4 in the flowers. I mean, there's 4 rows by 4 columns. You can see how those are done. Really cute. There is sashing in between. There's a small sashing around the edge, and then this directional print here, she has changed it so that it's always so on the sides it's going horizontal, on the bottom and top it is a vertical. You can see how she's done that. Really cute. And then the larger floral border around the edges. So fun. I love this fabric line. The backing fabric she has chosen, I believe this was a wide backing. I don't remember there being a seam in it. And very pretty in the rust and the blues and the orangey, little bits of taupey colors, very, very pretty on the back there. So for the pantograph, Sharon said, I love the diagonal plaid bias cut or the diagonal plaid hexes. With the shapes of the flowers here, I decided to go with the hexes. I thought that really added to the look of the flowers. It really, they had that same, not quite a hexy look, but just kind of, and I like this, the design. It's really fun. So I didn't make this super small. The hexes are probably 2.5 inches, about that size. And then the thread color on this one is where I used this almond thread. So this is 3005 in Superior, in the Omni, and a little bit of a grayer tone. This is just a step up from the cream, or one number up from the cream. I don't know if this consecutive numbers, because sometimes they jump around, but a little bit up from the cream, a little bit of a grayer look in this thread. And so while it's on the cream color sashing, it takes on a very creamy looking color. But then when you put it on these muted ones, it almost has a little bit more of a gray tint. So a nice neutral color. Just kind of went with this. White would have been very bright. Let me show you the cream. And again, if you're only wanting to invest in one, I would say a cream would be a good choice. This one matches. I'm not saying it didn't match, but a little brighter than the almond one that I just used. And so let me hold these together. Maybe you can see them together. Either one would have worked, but when I was auditioning, I thought, I think this one just kind of adds, is kind of more the same tone there. Very pretty. Like this. Love this fabric. And I said 72 by 72, so love the fabric, love the pattern. I love how she's put these two together. I know sometimes it's difficult when you see a pattern to see it in a different colorway, and she did a really nice job picking a different pattern, a different fabric to go with this pattern. Love the floral border as well. Very cute. Sharon's second quilt is the 2023 Fat Quarter Shop Designer Mystery quilt. This is all done in Sunnyside, fabric line by Camille Roskelley. So Designer Mystery, I've never done one of the Designer Mysteries. My understanding is that each block is created by a different designer. It is a mystery until that month comes out. It's done as a block of the month. And so you can see each one of the 12 blocks. It's set in a 3 per row, 4 rows each, so that's all 12 of them. And then you have these cute setting blocks, a lot of negative space. Even though it is this blueprint, it is in your negative space, and your pantograph shows up really, really nicely in this one. This one I did use the cream color thread on this one. White would have been too bright, and the cream just blends really nicely with these little darker, even though they're pastel type colors, just a little darker. This line by Camille Roskelley has a little bit more of the pinks and the mauve colors in it, along with her greens, but the greens on this one are a little lighter. I do like the blue, the darker blue. So fun. Let me show you the backing fabric. The backing fabric is the white with the blue bouquets on it. A little smaller, but you've got a lot of negative space in there as well. I didn't use white, even though this was a little whiter than the front. I wanted the thread color to really blend with the front, and so it's a little creamier on the back of this. But you have to make a choice one way or the other. So if this is white and that's a little creamier on the front, then I felt like white was going to be too bright on those blue negative spaces right there. I didn't want, while I want the quilting to stand out in those spots, I don't want it to be a bright spot. So by using cream on those, they do blend a little bit better. And then it's just a little creamy on the back on that white. A lot of texture though. You're just seeing a lot of texture there. For the Pantograph, this is called Moulin Rouge. I love this Pantograph. I did shrink this one down. Not super tight, but I would say a little denser than on some of the prior ones that I've used this on. I think this just adds so much texture to these inner parts, adds a very nice finish to this quilt. It's more of a traditional feel to this quilt, traditional setting, and that it's done in a grid. And you do have the setting squares or blocks in here. And you know, I don't know, I'd have to study this a little bit more. You've got a block here that's in between the designer ones, and then almost just like, yeah. So this is the block that's set in between the rows of the designer blocks, and then that same one is turned and set into the rows horizontally in between the rows, and then this is just a solid piece of fabric. And but doesn't that look intricate though? It looks like that's your block. I love that. I love how easy piecing creates that secondary effect when you put it into a grid pattern, especially when you see that a lot in a grid pattern, because you get those secondary patterns that show up. So the Pantograph, I just really like the density of this one. I like how it just gives that more traditional feel. I love this Pantograph. It's a very fun spiral, but with some feather motifs. It does have a little bit of a circle in there too. Let me pull this in a little closer so you can see it. All right, so even on the darker fabrics, I think you can still kind of see that Pantograph. Oh man, what do I say? I just love this. I love the texture. I loved when I was quilting it out. It was so pretty. And another thing, by going a little denser, if I'm not saying that this was with Sharon's quilt, but what you will find is if you have a little bit of maybe waviness, or some of your blocks are a little rippled or something. Sharon's was not at all, but I just want to make the comment that if you do a little denser, that actually will stitch out some of those little bits of waves. You have to make sure not to crease it. That's not, you know, you don't want to put creases into the quilt, but anytime you have some extra piecing and maybe your piecing's not quite perfect, Sharon's was perfect and no troubles there, but if you're quilting your own, sometimes a denser pattern will cover up some of those flaws a little bit more. And Sharon's didn't have any flaws. I just want to make that comment that sometimes we think if I go a looser design, then it would be better. It's actually the opposite way. If you do it a little tighter, it really stitches out some of, just makes that whole quilt lay a little flatter. This one also, because this one measures 82 by 93, and I can't remember, this one had a vertical seam, if I remember. Let me look real quick. Yeah, this one had a vertical seam running down the middle of the quilt. Now, I will load a quilt vertical if that's the best way to do it. If I am doing a pantograph, that looks fine either way, that it looks, if I stitched it out this way, or if I stitched it out the long way, if I turned the quilt and stitched out the long way, if it's going to look the same either way, then, and if I have, if I can, I will turn the seam so that it's a horizontal seam across my bars, if that makes sense. So the way you're looking at this now, this quilt right here, right now, has a vertical seam down the backing, right, like this. If I would load that onto my bars, then as I am loading that backing onto my bars, that seam is building up and building up and building up right in one spot on my bars. And it's doable, I do it all the time. But on this quilt, the pantograph looks very similar whether it's stitching out this way or it's stitching out this way. So I actually loaded this quilt with the backing fabric the other way so that that horizontal seam, so that vertical seam is now horizontal, and it hit my bars all at one time. So as I'm rolling that backing onto the bars, that vertical seam is now horizontal, and as I'm rolling it, it hits that bar all at the same time as I'm rolling it, and it's the same buildup. You know, it's the same height across the entire length of that bar at one time. I'm not adding that seam on top of each other. It horizontally, it's there all at one time, and it just rolls right on. And then I loaded the quilt the same direction. So this was actually, when it was loaded on the long arm, the length of it was set horizontal. The width of the quilt was actually done from top to bottom, if that makes sense. One way that creates a much longer pass across, which means that you're not stopping and starting as many times. You don't have as many rows to stitch out, which is nice. But then again, that seam is what I was most concerned about, is that I'm dealing with that seam one time in the entire quilt, not each row. Every time I'm stitching it, do I have to worry about that middle seam and making sure my fabric is stretched taut on the sides, because where that seam is, your fabric's going to be tighter on that seam, and it's going to be looser out to the edges. So on this quilt, it worked great to turn it horizontally. You do have to watch. Some pantographs aren't going to stitch out the same by turning the quilt the opposite way. So just something to notice. But sometimes I do it on purpose. I will load a quilt the opposite way because I want the pantograph to look different on the quilt. You know, vertical lines. Let's say if I wanted horizontal lines on this quilt all the way across, I would load it just as you're seeing now, because I wanted those lines to go this way. If I wanted the lines to go vertical, I would load the quilt the other way and again stitch out horizontal lines. But then when you orient the quilt back to the width being the smaller and the length being the longer, then those lines would be horizontal, or they would be vertical at that point. I stitched them out horizontal, but when I turn the quilt and orient it to the rectangle shape that we're used to, those lines would be running up and down. So just something to be aware of. And sometimes I know, you know, dealing with seams, I want you to seam the quilt the most economical way that you can. Fabric costs a lot. I understand that. If you can do a wide backing, I do feel that wide backing is the best value for your money. And I at one time, several years ago, I did a whole comparison, and I'll try to address that again maybe soon in my question and answer video that I'm working on soon. Address that whole, you know, is the wide backing most economical or not? In my calculations, at least a couple years ago, it was most economical. But I also understand on some quilts, it's more economical to do 2 long pieces of yardage with a vertical seam. You do absolutely what is best for your pocketbook, and then I will orient the quilt however I need to for that. Sometimes, you know, the size of the quilt, you have to do 3 rows, all horizontal that way. So you do what's best, and we will deal with it on the long arm. And but if you're long arming your own, just some tricks there for you. So that is Sharon's quilt, and she did a beautiful job. And that is all for today. I will be sharing pictures of the wedding in my newsletter this weekend. So if you are not subscribed to my email list, you'll want to do that. That is also down below in the description box. Just click the More button and it should drop down and show you all the links to the quilts that you've seen today, to the pantographs, and also to get long arm prep instructions. If you are wanting to have me do your long arm quilting, there is a form there that you can download, fill out, and send that in with your quilt. And it also has my website down there, and if you would like to see pictures from the wedding this weekend, then you can join my email list and I will send that out over the weekend. So hope you have a wonderful autumn, fall weekend, that you're doing something fun. And as always, I will be back here next week with more customer quilts, as well as my own personal projects, because every quilt is worth finishing. We'll see you next week.